time we'll talk on another directive that comes with Angular. It's the ng4. The ng4 directive initiates a template once per item for an iteratable. An iteratable can be an array, it can be an object, and you can iterate over the key and value. The context for each initiated template inherits from the outer context with the given loop variable set to the current item for the iteratable, which means that you have a variable called the item, whatever you want to call it, and it will represent the current item in the iteratable object. ng4 provides several exported values that can be aliased to a local variables, so you can use some local variables called index, so you can know which index you are now viewing. You can use the last, it will be a boolean object that indicates whether this item is last in the iteratable, even if this item has an even index, or odd if this item has an odd index. When the content of the iterator changes, ng4 makes the corresponding changes to the DOM. What exactly does it does? It uses object to identify, to track insertion and deletions within the iterator and reproduce those changes in the DOM. This has important implications for animation and other stateful controllers, such as input element which accept user input and that are represented. Inserted rows can be animated in, deleted out, rows can be animated out, and unchanged rows can retain any unsafe state. It is possible for us for the identities of elements in the iterator to change while the data does not. This can happen, for example, if the iterator produced from an RPC to the server and that RPC is rerun. Even if the data hasn't changed, the second response will produce object with different identities, and Angular will tear it down. Will tear the entire DOM down and rebuild it. So it's a very expensive operation and should be avoided if possible. So let's see how we do it. Let's create a new TypeScript file. Let's call it ng4. So as usual, we'll import the component from the core. So this is done. We create a new decorator called component. And this receives a JavaScript object, and we create our class, we export it, so it will be visible in other location. And we create our constructor. If you want to do some heavy lifting, you can also use the ng-on-init method. You can do some heavy lifting inside, and let's create a public hour list, which is an array of strings, and we can initiate it in our ng-on-init or in the constructor. So let's initiate it to an empty array of strings. Let's add some functions to our class. So on add method will receive some text, and what we'll do, it will push the text into our list, and let's add a remove method. So we can use the splice method, and we just give it the index. So this time in our function we'll ask to get an index, which is a number. Okay, and our text is a string. So if we do some mistakes in this, TypeScript will yell at us. And we know the index we would like to splice. and we know that we would like to splice only just one object. So now we have our initialization, we have our adding method and our removing method. So now we need to describe the component. So what we need to do is, first of all, if we want it to be visible to the router, we'll add a selector. Okay, let's call it ng4, and we create a template. And we can also create another file for the template if we don't want it, and use the require method and import our template, or we can use the template URL if you have another different location, but this time we'll do it inline. Okay, so what we're gonna do in this example, we're gonna ask the user to insert some text, and when he presses a button, we would like to add it to our list. So what I did here is quite simple. I inserted a text input text. I created an object called the value to represent the text. I didn't bind it to the class because I don't have any need to, but I can also do it and then use the ng model directive. I also added a button. I gave it the click event, so you see it's click, and that's meaning it goes from the HTML into the class, so it's one-way binding. And I pass it the value of our new object and add the button. So now we're going to see how we use our ng4. Let's create unsorted list, and in this list we have a list element, and what we need to do, we have the star ng4, and we use it with L angular for each item. So this means we created a new object called item, which represents one of our values in our one of our objects inside of the iteratable. In this case, it's our list. And what else I can do? I can create a local variable that will represent the current index of this iteratable, of this object inside the iteratable. Let's print it out to the screen. So we create a span, and all we have to do is display our item. And let's add a button for removing this element. Okay, and give it a click event, which we bind also to our class. And we have our function onRemove. And this time we give our onRemove, we give the index of the current item we would like to remove. Okay. So you can see we have our ng4 directive that we just, the component that we just built. Let's give it some number and see what happens. So we see it was added to the list. We can add as much as we want. We can delete it if we want. So you can see it does what it's expected to do. There's another several ways you can use the ng4. You can also use the template element or the template attribute, so it's quite easy. I'll give you some more examples. So you can use the template attribute and then just at the beginning say it's an ng4, and you can use the template element and also declare that it's an ng4, and in this case all you have to do is just add this. Okay, so this is how we do it. It's quite easy. I usually use the ng star, so I think it's the most readable, the most easy, and it's great. We still continue to use the regular elements of the DOM, the list item. So for me, it's the preferable use. You can also use the index or the odd or even object that you receive from the ng4 to create some animations or other styling that you would like to do. You can color each even row with one color and each odd row with a different color using the ng style or ng class attribute. So it's also a good thing that you can use. And this is it. So thank you very much.